Where do I even start? I guess the best place is when I was 19, just out of high school and getting ready for college. Like most kids my age, I probably thought I was pretty hot stuff. Back then, I dated around a lot, always chasing after new girls, half for the thrill of seeing who I could win over. Honestly, I loved the challenge. Would she go for it or wouldn't she? That was always the question on my mind. For every girl who said yes, there seemed to be another who said no, but I kept trying. I started out in college, but like a lot of guys back then, I didn't stick with it for long. My priorities were definitely not on my classes, I was more focused on the chase than on the books. Still, I learned enough while I was there to land a few good jobs later on. I ended up working in sales, which meant I visited a lot of homes, and to be honest, I enjoyed it. Most of my stops were all business, and I kept things professional, which paid off because I became one of the top guys in the company. But every now and then, there were stops where the atmosphere was different. You could just sense it as soon as you walked in. The place felt a little more charged, especially if the lady of the house was there alone, wearing something a little more relaxed or even just her robe. Those sales calls usually wrapped up quickly, and sometimes, if the moment was right and both of us wanted to, things went a step further. The hardest part for me was figuring out whether a woman was just being friendly or if she was actually interested in something more. I never wanted to risk my job just for a little excitement, especially when there were plenty of opportunities out there. So I played it safe, I let the women make the first move, and only took things further if they made their intentions clear. Looking back, I probably missed out on some chances, but I figured it was better to be careful. Eventually, I met a really sweet girl one day while I was out shopping at the mall. She was a little thing, just over 5 feet tall, always smiling, and had a cheerful energy that was hard to ignore. While she was helping me at the counter, I laid on the charm and kept trying to ask her out. After about the 10th time stopping by, she finally said yes to a date. I could tell I was really falling for her, and I hoped she was starting to feel the same way about me. During that time, I kept working my sales job while I dated Nancy. We got along great, and eventually our relationship got more serious and we became intimate. This time, it felt different, it felt like real love, not just another casual thing. For once, I wanted to make her happy, not just myself. About 10 months after we started dating, she found out she was pregnant. She was on birth control, but I guess we ended up being that 1 in 100 exception. A few months into her pregnancy, we decided to get married. Looking back now, I realize I probably wasn't ready to settle down. I truly loved Nancy, but at 20, I was still pretty immature and honestly, I often let my impulses lead the way. Even after getting married, I ended up having flings with a couple of women just because I could. It never felt like it did with Nancy, those times were more about the chase than anything else. I think deep down I was addicted to the thrill, not the connection. I never bragged about it to anyone, but I have a feeling people could tell. There I was, a married guy with a baby on the way. If folks wanted to call me a jerk or worse, I'd say I probably deserved it. Now, I can see just how selfish I was, but back then, all I cared about was chasing the next thrill. I really was just a dumb kid. One day, Nancy discovered that I'd been with one of the women from work. She was heartbroken, cried a lot, and we talked it through. She seriously considered leaving me, and honestly, I wouldn't have blamed her if she did. In the end, she forgave me. That's when I really started to feel guilty about what I'd done. At 20, I never really thought about the consequences until it was too late. Seeing the pain I'd caused my wife tore me up inside. I made a promise to myself, and to Nancy, that I'd never cheat on her again if she could forgive me. I kept my word after that, trying my best to be a good husband. When our baby boy arrived, we named him Jacob. Suddenly, we were a real family. We had our ups and downs, just like anyone else, money was always tight, and we didn't always agree about what to spend it on. We argued about little things, but we worked through it. Despite everything, my love for Nancy only grew stronger after those rough times. I might not have always shown it, but it was real. I would have done anything for her. Being with her, both emotionally and physically, was the best feeling in the world. I made it my mission to make sure she was happy in every way. To this day, she's the only woman I ever felt that deeply connected to. I loved making her feel good. We even tried some things outside our comfort zone a few times, but usually, we just enjoyed being together however it happened. She wasn't a big fan of some things, and I respected that. I just wanted her to enjoy herself, and if she was happy, so was I. A couple of years later, our second son, David, was born. We couldn't have been happier, we really felt like a true family. We might have seemed pretty typical, but I wouldn't have traded it for anything. I'd always dreamed of running my own business, wanting to be in control of my own future. Nancy and I talked about it a lot, even though money was tight with 2 kids and all the expenses that come with them. Eventually, we found a small hardware store that we could afford. We bought it on a payment plan and worked hard to make it a success. It wasn't a gold mine, but it kept us going. I felt proud to finally achieve that dream, a business of my own, a great wife, and 2 sons. Life felt pretty darn good. After the second baby, Nancy didn't lose all the weight she'd gained, and she was often pretty hard on herself. I tried to reassure her that she looked great to me, no matter what. I loved her for who she was, not for her dress size. Honestly, I was about 30 pounds overweight myself, so who was I to judge? She tried diet after diet, always looking for a way to slim down. We ended up arguing about her weight a lot, and more often than not, she'd bring up my old affair, even though it happened years ago. I guess even though she forgave me, the hurt never completely went away. She worked part-time while the boys were growing up, but when they got to high school, she took a promotion at her job. She became a department manager, which meant better pay. She also decided to try dieting again and even joined a women's health club. I didn't mind, especially since it was a women-only gym. Sometimes, those co-ed places can stir up trouble. I was surprised she stuck with the program, but she did, and the pounds started coming off. She was feeling good about herself, and that made me happy too. I liked seeing her in good spirits, and if losing weight made her happy, then I was all for it. Our love life even picked up again after slowing down for a while. Like a lot of married couples, things had gotten a little routine, and sometimes weeks or months would pass without anything happening. But whenever we did connect, it always felt good. Nancy liked her job and was enjoying her new self-confidence. She seemed genuinely happier, and I couldn't have been more pleased for her. Then, out of the blue, she came home one day and asked if I'd mind if she went out with her friends for a girls' night. I said sure, since she'd done that sort of thing before. But this time, she wanted to double-check that I was really okay with it, and it struck me as a little odd. I sensed something was up, so I asked her if anything was wrong. She said she was probably just going through a phase, maybe something to do with menopause, and that her moods were swinging all over the place. I hugged her, told her I loved her, and promised I'd always be there. She hugged me back, but I could feel her trembling a little. I knew we were facing a problem, but it didn't feel like the right time to push her. I figured I'd have to give it some thought and decide how to talk to her about it. That Saturday, I watched how she got ready to go out with her friends. She wore a nice pair of black pants and a blouse, nothing flashy, but she looked great to me, as always. She told me where they'd be in case I needed her, and her friend Pam came to pick her up. But something still bothered me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. After waiting a little while, I decided to go check things out for myself. I didn't want to snoop, since I'd always trusted her, but there was just something different about her lately, and I needed to know what it was. Nancy and her friends ended up at a big dance club that doubled as a lounge. It was easy to get lost in the crowd, so I found a spot on the second-floor balcony where I could see the whole lower level. From up there, I spotted Nancy and her girlfriend sitting together in one of those half-circle booths, laughing and having a good time. Maybe I was worrying for nothing, I thought, watching her. I ordered a drink and just kept an eye on things, feeling a bit guilty for following her but needing some peace of mind. Her group was a mix of married, single, and divorced women, most of whom I'd met before. There were a few new faces, probably women she'd met at the gym. After about half an hour, some guys approached and asked a few of the ladies to dance. At first, Nancy turned them down, but after a couple of drinks, she agreed to dance. I didn't really mind her dancing, but given everything on my mind, it made me a little uneasy. Nancy started spending more and more time out on the dance floor that night. I didn't recognize any of the guys she was with. They could have been co-workers or just regular folks out looking for fun. I figured I'd stick around a little longer to see how things played out. Eventually, she started slow dancing with one particular guy, and he was definitely holding her close. I saw him drop his hands down and pull her toward him, but she just reached back and gently move his hands away. He kept trying it, and each time she would just push his hands off. But the last time, when he grabbed her again, she let his hand stay there a little longer before finally moving it away. Then I saw him reach up and touch her chest. He left his hand there for a few seconds before she pushed it away again. All of this was really getting to me. Should I step in? Should I confront her right there? The thing was, Nancy didn't even know I was there. I kept wondering if this sort of thing had happened before, or if she just didn't want to cause a scene in front of her friends. I honestly didn't know what to think. This just wasn't like her. After that song ended, she went back to the booth to sit with her friends. I was too far away to hear anything, But I could see that some of the women were laughing and smiling. Who knows what it was about? A few minutes later, the group started finishing up their drinks and looked like they were getting ready to go. They said their goodbyes to everyone around, including the guys. The man Nancy had danced with leaned in and gave her a light goodbye kiss, nothing too wild, just a quick peck, but it still bugged me. I couldn't tell if I was overreacting, but I knew it would stick with me, no matter how innocent it was. I got up fast and slipped out the back door, got in my car, and drove home. When I got back, the boys were in their room watching TV. I just said hello and went straight to the kitchen to pour myself a drink, figuring it wouldn't hurt to smell like I'd been drinking, might help explain my mood. Nancy showed up about 10 minutes later. I greeted her and asked if she'd had a good night. She said she did, but I could tell she seemed uneasy. I looked her in the eyes and asked, "Nancy, do we need to talk?" As far as I know, Nancy has always been honest with me. Sure, she probably has her secrets, just like anyone, but I'd never caught her in an outright lie. Now, I saw tears start to form in the corners of her eyes. She looked at me and said, "Jim, I've got a problem, and I don't know what to do," and then she just started to cry. I put my arms around her and hugged her close. I asked, "Does this have anything to do with your girls' night out?" She answered, "Yes. No. Maybe. I don't know. Let's sit down, I think we need to talk." I said, "Nancy, please tell me what's bothering you. Start with tonight, what happened?" I needed her to tell me what I'd just seen, so I could know if she'd be honest. She started, "Well, we got to the club and started drinking. I danced with a few different guys. One of them in particular started touching me, my back, my chest, and I know I should have told him off, but I didn't. I let him touch me, Jim. I didn't really stop him. I moved his hands, but when he kept putting them back, I didn't get angry." I asked, "Nancy, why didn't you make him stop or push him away for good?" Through tears, she said quietly, "Because I liked it, Jim. I wanted him to touch me. I'm sorry, I just can't get these feelings out of my system. It's making me crazy." I asked, "Nancy, has this ever happened before?" She started crying harder and admitted, "No, not exactly like this, but over the last couple of months, I've let guys touch me. I was hoping it was just a phase and you'd never find out. But I just can't keep hiding it, it's tearing me up inside. I love you so much, Jim, but I feel like I missed out on something. You're the only man I've ever been with, and I know you've been with other women." I stopped her and said, "Nancy, you've been bringing up my mistake from 15 years ago for a long time now. But you can't use it as a reason to step out on me. Is that what you're after, my permission to cheat, to make me feel weak, to humiliate me? Because I can't accept that, Nancy. I love you with all my heart, and I always will, but I won't let you make a fool out of me just because you want someone else to compare me to." Then I asked, "So, is that what you want, Nancy? To go off, do whatever, and then come back home to me after you've satisfied your curiosity?" Still crying, she said, "I don't know, Jim. I just don't know." Tears welled up in my eyes too, and I told her she was right, neither of us could keep living this way. We both needed some space to think things through. I told her I'd move out for about 2 months, she could stay at the house with the boys, and I'd live in the little apartment above the hardware store. She pleaded, "Jim, I love you. Please don't go, I'm just so confused. Please don't leave me." But I said, 2 months, Nancy. 2 months for you to figure out if you want this new life or if you want to stay married to me. I have no idea what you'll decide, but if you decide to start seeing other men, I'll file for divorce right away. This time is for you to make up your mind, not for you to have flings. I'm just going to take it a day at a time, and I hope you'll do the same. I added, since tomorrow is Sunday, I'll gather up my personal stuff and move it to the apartment. I'll talk to the boys in the morning, too. The next morning, I asked Jacob and David to come into the living room. I figured they probably overheard some of what happened the night before. They sat down, and I explained that their mom and I were going through some tough times, and that I'd be living above the store until we sorted things out. I made sure they knew it wasn't their fault, it was just something between me and their mother. Nancy stood behind them, eyes full of tears, but she didn't say a word. I told them we both loved them more than anything, and they could always talk to either of us. I promised I'd still come to their school events and be around when they needed me. Other than me not staying at the house, nothing else was going to change. No matter what happened, they'd always have a home, and they wouldn't need to worry about moving or losing their friends. They wanted to know more, but I told them that's all I could say for now. I explained that their mom and I had some big problems to work out, and we'd know in a couple of months what the future would look like. The boys looked sad as they helped me carry my things to the apartment above the hardware store. I told them everything would be alright and asked them to help their mom as much as possible. She needed their support if we wanted to stay together as a family. I told them not to ask her too many questions about why I left, but to be there for her and help out around the house. They're good kids, and I knew they'd do the best they could. I was only a mile away, so they could always reach me if they needed anything. Nancy needed time to sort things out, and to be honest, I was pretty lost myself. What if I lost her for good? My world felt like it was falling apart, and I had no idea what to do next. I guess, in the end, it was all up to Nancy now. I knew I had some big obstacles ahead of me. Here I was with a wife who, as far as I could ever tell, had always been faithful. I believed her. She stood by my side during my wild years and kept our marriage afloat, even when I didn't deserve it. To the best of my memory, Nancy had never lied to me. But now, she had shared something so honest it could end everything between us. Truth is, I love her more than I can say, and the idea of losing her scares me to death. I'm no pushover and never will be, but I have no clue how to fix this. This might be the biggest choice she'll ever face, whether to risk our marriage or stay loyal. One thing I know for sure, I can't let her have it both ways. Moving into the little apartment above my hardware store felt lonely. I missed Nancy every single day. I was trying to give her space, hoping she'd come to her own decision. I kept myself busy at the shop, working late, mostly to distract myself. Business was getting better, but all that paperwork was starting to pile up and get the best of me. I always liked working with customers, but when it came to the bookkeeping, I was ready to pull my hair out. Pretty soon, I figured, I'd have to hire someone just to handle the numbers. So, I put an ad in the paper for an office worker with a background in business, and figured I'd set up some interviews in the coming weeks. My boys would drop by every other day or so, lending a hand with stocking shelves and running deliveries. Aside from me, I only had 2 full-time workers in the store. I'd ask my sons how their mom was holding up, and they'd tell me she was having a tough time, crying almost every night. They mentioned she'd finally gone to see a doctor, which worried me even more. About 2 weeks after I'd moved out, I was at my desk knee-deep in invoices when Pam, Nancy's lifelong best friend, stormed in. If anyone knew Nancy better than me, it was Pam. They were closer than sisters and shared just about everything. Pam walked right up to me and didn't hold back for a second. "You big idiot, what is wrong with you? How could you do this to Nancy?" I tried to respond, "Wait a second, Pam. You don't really know." But she cut me off. "No, you wait. Nancy's always loved you, always. She's going through something and came to you for help. And what do? You walk out on her. Instead of helping, you just leave. I'm so mad at you I could scream." "Pam," I tried to explain, "she's confused, I can't just sit by and let her go off and have affairs. I thought giving her time and space might help her figure things out." Pam just shook her head at me. "She needs your love and support right now, not more loneliness. She's in a tough spot, and what do? You walk out and leave her to fend for herself. Even the guys at the store are placing bets on who's going to make a move. Don't you get it? The one person she needs just turned his back. Jim, if you want to save this marriage, you better get your act together, and fast." Honestly, I was floored. I thought I'd been doing the right thing, but hearing it from Pam made me realize just how wrong I might have been. I'd promised Nancy I'd always be there for her, and then I walked away when she needed me most. Pam was right. I'd made a mess of things. I looked at Pam and asked, "What should I do now? I'm lost. You know I love Nancy more than anything. You're her best friend, did you see this coming?" Pam sighed. "Nancy and I have been talking about this for a while now. Maybe she's going through some kind of change, women go through things like that. Since she joined that weight class, she's been around women who see things differently, and after dropping 50 pounds, she's been getting a lot more attention from men. That might have gotten into her head." Before Pam left, she gave me one piece of advice. "Make sure you're at Ramon's restaurant on Friday night at 9. You can either take Nancy home, or you can say goodbye. That's up to you." I was stunned. "What do you mean? What's going on, Pam?" She told me, "There's a management meeting at Nancy's work Friday at 7, dinner and drinks afterward, managers only, no spouses. Word is, a couple of her coworkers are planning to get her drunk and try something. I'm not management, so I can't be there to look out for her. I hear it's going to be a dressy evening, you can guess why. Does Nancy know about this?" "She does, but as a manager, she's got to go. She told me she'll be careful and keep her guard up." I told Pam, "Thanks for being such a good friend. I promise you, someone will be looking out for Nancy on Friday, and that'll be me, whether they like it or not. Nancy's perspective. I first met Jim back when we were just teenagers. I was working at a store in the mall when he came in and kept trying to win me over. He'd show up almost every day, asking if I'd go out with him, and honestly, it made me laugh. One day, I finally decided to give him a chance. He looked so surprised when I said yes, after turning him down so many times. He grinned, "Are you serious? You'll really go out with me?" I said, "Yes, Jim, but don't get any crazy ideas." After that, we started dating pretty regularly. We'd make out, and after a while, I let him kiss me and hold me, even though I acted shy about it. Little by little, I let my guard down, and soon I was letting him touch me under my clothes. The truth is, I was falling for him hard, but I didn't want him to know just how much. After a few months, I knew things were going to get more serious, so I went to my doctor and got a prescription for birth control. I'd only been taking the pills a few days when Jim asked me out to the beach one evening. I wore my two-piece swimsuit, and as it got late, we were pretty much alone out there. Even now, I can remember that night perfectly. It was when I lost my virginity to Jim. We spread out a blanket on the sand, and soon he was kissing me. He reached under my swimsuit top and began caressing me, then gently pulled the top up, and before I knew it, he was kissing my chest and making me feel things I'd never felt before. Caught up in the moment, I pressed his head closer, and he slid his hand down, slipping under my swimsuit bottom and resting his palm against me. No one had ever touched me like that before. Soon, he was softly exploring, making me breathe faster, and I just let go and trusted him. He slid my swimsuit bottom off, and for a moment, I thought he'd rush things, but instead, he took his time, showing me just how much he cared. He nestled closer, kissing me and making me feel cherished and loved. That first experience, I realized, was the reason I love when he's so attentive and affectionate with me, even now. Eventually, Jim moved gently, making sure I was ready, and after a bit of hesitation, he became my first. I felt both the pain and the joy that came with it, but above all, I felt connected to him in a way I never had before. I even cried, overwhelmed by emotion, and Jim asked if I was okay. I told him I just hoped he would still love me after that night. He held me close and said, "Nancy, I'll always love you. I'll always be there for you." From that point on, it seemed like every time Jim and I got together, we ended up making love. Not long after, I noticed I'd missed 2 periods in a row, so I went to the doctor. I thought maybe it was just my birth control pills messing with me. But when the doctor checked things out, he told me, "Nancy, you're pregnant." I was stunned. "But I'm on the pill," I said, kind of in disbelief. He explained that either I started taking them too late or I just happened to be that rare case where birth control didn't work. I walked out of his office feeling completely overwhelmed. I went to find Jim right away, and he could see something was up. He asked, "What's wrong?" With tears in my eyes, I told him, "I'm pregnant." He looked at me, surprised, and said, "But I thought you were on the pill?" I explained, I was, but somehow it still happened. "I want you to know, I'm keeping this baby whether or not you want to be a part of it. I love you, but I'd never force you into anything." Right then and there, Jim got down on one knee, took my hand, and said, "Nancy, will you marry me? I promise, I'll always be there for you and our child." Of course, I said yes, and that's how our life together started, all those years ago. The past few months have brought a lot of changes for me. Some were small, but they felt big. I got promoted at work, more responsibility, more respect, and a better paycheck. Suddenly, I was part of the management team. The boys were growing up fast, so they didn't need me quite as much. That gave me a new sense of freedom. I started working out at a health club, mostly to lose weight, and for once, I was actually making progress. I dropped 50 pounds and felt like a new person. Jim always said my weight didn't matter to him. He'd tell me he loved me just the way I was. But honestly, I figured he was seeing me through rose-colored glasses. What else was a husband supposed to say? What I did notice was other men started paying me more attention, offering little compliments that made me feel good. I wasn't looking to have an affair, but it was flattering to get noticed. At the gym, I'd hear women talk about their lives, and it was a whole new world for me. Some talked about the games men played to get their attention, or compared stories about their love lives. A lot of their conversations were all about physical stuff, how guys acted, what they wanted, what happened behind closed doors. They didn't talk much about love, or marriage, or even real relationships, just about sex. Whenever they asked about my own life, I'd just smile. My marriage was built on love and respect, not just physical pleasure. It wasn't about wild stories or having multiple partners, it was about two people truly sharing their lives, through the ups and downs. Pam, my closest friend, and I would talk all the time. She knew I still loved Jim, even with all his faults. She was there for me, especially when Jim and I started to drift apart. He just didn't understand what I was dealing with. Pam was the one who finally convinced me to see a doctor about my mood swings. She even suggested I try a counselor, though I joked Jim would never go for paying someone just to talk. When we'd have our girls' nights out, Pam would pull me aside and caution me. She said, "Be careful, Nancy. Don't do something you'll regret." I'd reply, "The girls at the gym say a little harmless flirting gets them more attention." But Pam would just look at me and say, "Ask yourself, is attention from these guys really what you want?" Deep down, I knew she was right. Still, it felt good to be admired. I'll admit, I let a few men put their arm around me, or flirt a little, but I always told myself I wouldn't let it go further. After a couple months of that kind of living, it started wearing on me. Guys would whisper things to me, telling me how much they wanted me, what they'd do if I let them. I always told them straight out, no, I would never cheat on my husband. I made the mistake once of telling a coworker that just because my husband had made mistakes didn't mean I'd make the same ones. Sometimes I found myself wondering what it would be like to be with someone else. Jim was my only lover, and while I was happy, I had nothing to compare it to. He was always good to me, sometimes gentle, sometimes passionate, but he always made sure I felt loved. And let's be real for a second, women have their own fantasies, too. Everyone does. It only becomes a problem when you start thinking about acting them out. Then, out of nowhere, I started having mood swings and these flashes of jealousy or loneliness. Sometimes I thought Jim wasn't paying enough attention to me, and it just made my mind wander to places I didn't like. It scared me, honestly. I didn't know what was happening, or why I couldn't shake these feelings. That's when I realized I needed help. I just wanted Jim's hugs and comfort, the safety I always felt when he was close. But instead, he gave me an ultimatum. He told me if I had an affair, our marriage was over. Then he moved out and gave me 2 months to decide what I wanted. I felt totally lost. If Pam hadn't been there for me in those first weeks, I don't know what I would have done. Pam's been through her own share of hard times. She caught her husband cheating in the worst way possible, came home to find him in bed with another man. She told me she nearly lost it that day, but somehow she kept her cool. They were married 7 years, and she had no clue he was living a double life. After the divorce, she was slow to trust anyone new, but now she's dating a guy named Ray, who's been through heartbreak himself. They seem happy together, and I truly hope things work out for them. Pam deserves a good life, she's one of the most loyal friends anyone could hope for. I scheduled a doctor's appointment for Wednesday, hoping to get my head clear before the big work meeting on Friday. When I got there, my doctor, a woman, wanted to just talk for a few minutes before anything else. I told her about all the mood swings, how I'd been crying for no reason, and how my emotions were just all over the place. Then we got to the harder stuff. I opened up about the changes in my marriage, the ultimatum Jim gave me, and how I was worried I might make a mistake I'd regret. She gave me a gentle smile and told me I really should have come to her months ago, and maybe then I wouldn't be feeling so overwhelmed. She took me off my birth control pills and put me on a new kind of medication, something to help settle my hormones and hopefully even out my mood. Since I'd lost weight, she said I didn't need some of the pills I used to take, and that my body was just going through a lot of changes at once. She explained I was beginning to go through early menopause, but it would still be a few years before it was over. Then she looked me right in the eye and said, "Nancy, it's sad that your husband couldn't be there for you during all of this. I see couples split up all the time just because they don't understand each other. Men will always be drawn to women who take care of themselves, but most of them aren't looking for anything real, just attention or excitement. What you have with Jim is worth fighting for, and I really think if you both just talk openly, you can work it out." She told me to call her if I had any more problems, otherwise she'd see me in a couple of months. I actually cried after talking with her, but she just gave me a big hug and told me, "Everything's going to work out for you." If I could just get through this meeting on Friday, I thought, maybe I could finally see Jim on Saturday and we could talk. I missed him so much. The big lug. Back to Jim. After Pam left, I was completely shaken up. How could I let things get this bad between me and Nancy? I tried calling her right away, but the boys told me she was out at a doctor's appointment. At least she was getting some help. Still, I just wished I could hear her voice. So, the next day, I called her at work. When Nancy picked up, she sounded relieved. "Jim, I'm so glad you called. Could you come by this Saturday so we can talk?" I asked, "How about Friday?" She said, "I wish I could, but there's this mandatory work meeting I have to attend, and it's going to run late." I told her, "Nancy, I love you. I just needed to tell you that." Her voice cracked, "I love you too, Jim. Please come Saturday. I'll be there. I promise," I said, telling myself there was no way I was going to let things fall apart again. That night, though, my mind just wouldn't let me rest. I kept tossing and turning, haunted by worry and doubt. I had this terrible dream that felt all too real, one of those nightmares where your biggest fears come to life. In it, I saw Nancy at that work dinner, sitting on a couch between two men. She looked lost and far away, and these men were getting way too familiar with her, all while others watched and laughed. I felt helpless and furious, like I was being mocked for not standing up for my wife. In the dream, it just kept getting worse, with more people joining in, and I felt like I was losing Nancy completely. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart racing, relieved it was just a dream. Thank God none of it was real. I don't think I could have handled it if it was. There's just no way I could stand by and let my marriage become something like that. I love and respect Nancy too much to ever let her become just an object to anyone, least of all to the kind of people in that dream. No matter what, I promised myself I'd be there for her at that restaurant on Friday night. Friday finally arrived, but I was a wreck. I could barely concentrate on anything at work. I just wanted to see Nancy and tell her that everything would be all right, that I'd be there to stand by her side. I called her office 3 times, but her bosses said she was either in meetings or out. It drove me crazy, but I knew I'd have to wait until that evening unless she found a moment to call me back. I asked Milton, one of my employees, if he could cover for me the rest of the day and work all day Saturday too. I explained that I wouldn't be around. Milton didn't hesitate. He said he could handle it. He's a solid worker, someone I can always count on. I told him I'd have my sons come by to help out that evening and again on Saturday. After that, I made a stop at the mall to see if I could find Nancy. The receptionist at her store told me all the bosses were out and wouldn't be back until Monday. Apparently, they had some district meeting, and after that, there was another one scheduled just for their store's management team that evening. She offered to take a message and promised Nancy would get it, but I just said I'd call Nancy on Monday instead. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. She was just the office girl and I knew she had nothing to do with any of this drama. I wandered out onto the sales floor and spotted Pam. She was friendlier this time around. Pam told me she had talked to Nancy before Nancy left for the meeting and said Nancy was really looking forward to seeing me on Saturday. That made me feel a little better. I asked Pam how Nancy was doing, how she looked and how she was feeling. Pam gave me a look and told me it was both good news and not so good news. She said Nancy had been feeling a lot better since seeing the doctor, almost like her old self again. I said, "Well, what's bad about that?" Pam sighed and told me Nancy looked incredible that night. She said Nancy was wearing a low-cut black mini dress and looked absolutely stunning. According to Pam, every guy at that meeting would notice her. She added that, thankfully, most of the managers there respected Nancy and didn't want to get mixed up in anything that might cause trouble, for themselves or for her. The only exceptions, Pam heard through the grapevine, were her 2 top bosses, Edward and Ryan. They were the only ones planning to make a move, and since they were the big shots, nobody else was likely to step in. I thanked Pam for telling me and for being the kind of friend who tells it straight. I told her I appreciated her talking sense into me, making me realize what I needed to do. Pam just smiled and said, "You two belong together. I'd hate to see anyone ruin that. You're both my best friends." Then she grinned and said her boyfriend Ray was pretty special too. I headed back to my apartment and tried to get myself cleaned up. I was going to a fancy place, so I figured I should at least look presentable. I put on some Dockers and a sport coat, skipped the tie. I'm just not a tie kind of guy. After all, I'm a hardware store owner, not a banker. Then I called my sons and let them know about helping Milton. They told me not to worry, that they'd be there to lend a hand. By the time I got to the store, it was around 8:30 p.m. Milton already had my boys working, stocking shelves. They're good kids, hard workers, even if they are mine. Sometimes I think about how nice it would be if they took over the store someday. That's every dad's dream, right? Leaving something behind for your kids. Before leaving, I asked Milton to give me a roll of nickels. He looked at me a little funny but handed it over without asking questions. With that, I headed out and made my way to the restaurant.